Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It is Tuesday, March 10th, 9:39 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, local time here in Aurora, Oregon, just south of Portland. So, going to try to do a load board video, but I'm mainly going to be talking about fuel prices and the freight market and things related to those two things. So those are the two main topics that I'm going to be talking about in this video. As far as the load board goes, I'm probably not going to comment too much on the loads. I'm just going to scroll through loads. It's basically just going to be something in the background while I'm talking. So let's start out. I'm working on a single monitor right now, so bear with me. Let's start out by looking at the truck count. The active trucks at Landstar is currently 7,550. That's a couple hundred more than the last time I remember. Last time I remember checking this, it was around 7,300 and something. So it's gone up by a couple hundred. It fluctuates constantly. This is just the number of active trucks. This is not the number of trucks leased to Landstar, but it gives you a rough idea of how many trucks are leased to Landstar. I don't know how many trucks are inactive at any given time. I would say probably a few hundred trucks inactive at any given time. Let's get the truck count again. See, it's already changed from 7,550 to 7,552. This number is constantly changing. They're constantly all day long putting trucks out of service and putting trucks in service. So for people who haven't been following the truck count, whenever I first leased on to Landstar during the freight boom, the fleet size was around 13,000 trucks, and that was in the summer of 2021. And now the fleet size is almost half that. So it seems to be stabilizing a little bit. All right, now let's go to load board. Total number of available loads, 87,000. That's pretty high. Let's check to see how many contract loads there are. Let's look at direct shipper only. And, okay. Direct shipper only, 11,500. That's actually pretty high for direct shipper loads. Not too long ago, that number was upwards of around 5 to 7,000, and then it got up around 10,000. Now it's above 10,000 at 11,500. So the amount of contract freight on Landstar's load board seems to be increasing. The amount of freight in general seems to be increasing. So that's pretty good. Now let's do a search here. Let's do van loads. Because if I just search the entire load board without restricting the load types, then you're going to see like some $80,000 loads or loads that are paying like $50, $100 a mile. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can come over to Landstar and become a millionaire. And those are going to be like oversized, overweight loads that require like a million permits and 15 escorts and crazy stuff like that. So let's go through here. And let's set team no, because we're not a team. We're going to do dry van teams, and we're going to set a max weight of 45,000 pounds, which is about the max you can haul in a dry van. And now we're at 9,200 loads. And let's put a minimum revenue of $250 a mile and $2,000. I don't want to see loads that pay less than $2,000 or $250 a mile. Now, a disclaimer, all of the prices that you see on Landstar's load board are the full rates. I only get 65% of the line haul and 100% of the fuel surcharge of whatever you see. And whatever prices you see, that's the all-inclusive rate. That includes everything. That is stop pay, fuel surcharge, everything is included on whatever prices you see on Landstar's load board. And I get roughly 70% of whatever you see. So if you see a load listed at $1,000, what I actually get paid for that load is about $700. and then I have all my expenses that have to come out of that. So a $2,000 load, I'm actually going to make about $1,400 gross to the truck on that load. 250 a mile, I actually make about $1.75 a mile. I would love to run at 250 a mile. That would be awesome. But $1.75 a mile is not awesome. All right, so 3,300 loads. So I'm just going to start out just searching on this and sorting by revenue, and we'll just start scrolling through it while I talk about stuff. Oh, a bunch of Alaska loads. Oh, what is this one? Oh, no, no, no. Thought we had a real good load there. It sorts by the agency code, which I don't know why it's defaulted to sort by that, but every time I search, I have to resort it by the revenue because it sorts by agency code, which is absolutely ridiculously dumb. And I've sent them emails asking them to change that, and I just got tired of sending emails. I've sent several emails asking them to change. This is a beta load board, um, and it has a lot of issues. It's missing a lot of information that the regular load board has, like accessorial pay. And I've sent them emails about all this stuff years ago, and nothing has changed. Like this. It looks pretty, but it's not functional. You know, between form and function, most people sit in the middle. I am an extremely function person. I don't care much about how anything looks. Like, you can tell by the way I dress, I don't give a shit how I look. I care about how I feel. Like, is it comfortable? Is it functional? So I'm a very functional person. So just because something looks pretty, that doesn't really mean much of anything to me. But yeah, it seems like they're focused more on the new load board looking pretty than being functional. So all right, I'm gonna scroll through this. Let me see what the. I need to move my blur effect over just a little bit to the left. Did I mess that up, or did they change how the things lined up? I'm not sure, but it's close enough. I just don't want you to be able to see phone numbers. If you do happen to see a phone number, don't call it. This is a private load board. If you call, they're going to assume that you're a Landstar contractor, and they're going to, ask you what your truck number is, and be like, I'm not pulling anything up, or that truck number doesn't sound familiar. That doesn't sound right, and it's going to be really awkward for everyone. You're not going to book the loads at these prices if you're not leased to Landstar. I've heard that there are severe penalties that Landstar puts on agents if they move these loads without a Landstar contractor. If they just move it on the spot market, I've heard that Landstar puts a really harsh penalty on the agents, and it makes the loads pay next to nothing on the spot market. So anyway, we're gonna scroll through these and talk about what's going on with the fuel and what's going on in Iran. So we'll just start scrolling here. This should be uploaded in 1920 by 1080 resolution. If it's blurry, then either it hasn't had time. If it's like just been uploaded, it hasn't. It takes it like an hour or so for the high definition version to be processed. So that might be one reason why it might be blurry. Another reason is your resolution on your device is set low, or your ISP is throttling it. Phone companies on cellular like data plans are notorious for restricting resolution on YouTube. You'll have to pay extra to be able to watch high resolution YouTube videos and stuff like that. All right, I'm going to start scrolling. And if you can't read it because it's low resolution, then sorry. So, what's going on with what do you got? State in Oregon to Olathe, Kansas. Oh, I might be booking a load. Olathe, Kansas. Sorry, I'm calling to book a load. Let me flip you over to. Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm calling about the load that was just posted to Olathe, Kansas. I'll take it. Yeah, I've done 2 or 3 of them. All right, thank you, sir. Bye bye. All right, that was one of the easiest loads I've ever booked in my life. He was like, "Oh, you've run these before with us, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, 2 or 3 of them." Well, you heard what I said. And he said, "All right, that makes it easy. I'll send it over to you in a couple minutes." And then I heard his kid yelling in the background. He was working from home. And then the call ended. So I just booked a load. I've been sitting here for almost 2 weeks. It's been a week and a half. I've been here. No, no, wait. Has it been over 2 weeks? Let me see here. I got here on the 25th. The 25th was Wednesday. The 4th was 1 week. And the 11th would be 2 weeks. So it's tomorrow will be 2 weeks. Um, Tomorrow will be 2 weeks. Let me pause this and check my email real quick. All right, it has not come through the email, so let me go through here and I'll tell you that. Let me at least see if I can show it to you. Let's flip this over to just me. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to show you there. It's show you what it looks like if it'll focus on that. So this let me explain something. So over here at Landstar, I go through like phases. Like sometimes the Maddox account with Don Flores, the DDB agency out of uh, the Maddox. I'm sure that there are several Maddox locations, but I run them all out of Terrell, Texas. Sometimes those loads pay really well, and I'm hauling a lot of Maddox loads out of Terrell, Texas. And sometimes I'm hauling a lot of Google loads, the JQL agency. And sometimes I'm hauling a lot of the ROR agency, which are window loads. What brand is it again? Starts with a J. I forget the name of the window brand. It's like the cheapest window brand at like the home improvement stores. So Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, they all sell them, and it's like the cheapest brand in there. It starts with a J. Because I went in there and I looked. I was curious as to how expensive the windows were. They're not cheap. Like the small windows are like 75, $100, and the bigger windows can get up to $500 or more a piece. And there can be, 500 to 1,000 windows in one of these trailers. But anyway, it goes in cycles where they'll renegotiate contract rates and the prices will fall. Like I used to haul a lot of what was the load that I was hauling? I was hauling a lot of ream rude loads out of Louisville, Texas, north side of Dallas. Terrell is the east side of Dallas. I was hauling those Louisville loads to the Portland, Seattle area. That was the load I was almost always leaving the house on, and uh, they renegotiated the contract. Now those loads pay like 50 to 75 cents a mile less than they used to, and I stopped hauling them. The Google loads used to pay a lot of money. Now they don't. They're really hit or miss. Sometimes you'll see a Google load that pays like $4 or $5 a mile, and other times you'll see Google loads that are paying like $1.80 a mile. It doesn't have any rhyme or reason to what they pay. You know, sometimes I'll see loads, Google loads coming out of the Portland area that are paying like $2.10 a mile, and then other times I'll see them at like $3.80, $4 a mile. Like there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to how the JQL agency prices the Google loads. But anyway, that window load. Let me. I want to get the email. Damn it! This is starting to like piss me off that I haven't gotten the email yet. It should only take them a minute or two to send the email. I'm gonna. Hmm. Start to get concerned that maybe he like did not process the load on me or something like that. Now, I didn't give him any of my information, my truck number, my email address, or anything like that, but the last time I booked a load with them, they did the exact same thing. They said, "Oh, you've run these loads for us before. Okay, I'll send it over to you in a minute." And I'm like, "Do you need my truck number or anything?" And then they were like, "It's this, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah." So whenever they get my phone number, it automatically pulls up my information on their screen. So, oh, I got it. I got it. Okay, I just got it. Starting to worry me because I've had agents before where I've booked loads and um, like I didn't get an email and then I call them back like 30 minutes later and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that load's not available anymore" or something like that. So let me let's see, statement, load detail. Let's They sent me a couple of things. Let me see if I can show you this. All right. Let me just double check this page. Um, they are only paying 49 cents per mile fuel surcharge. That's fucked up. Let me look at something real quick. Let me call him back. Hey, this is Daniel. I just booked a load with you. Are you the one I talked with? Okay. Yeah, I just looked at the freight bill and I noticed the fuel surcharge is basically like the standard. Fuel's gone up quite a bit in the last few days. Can we not do better than 49 cents a mile? Um, there's like, is there anything that you can throw on there to help with this? Because right now, Landstar's fuel surcharge is 62 cents a mile national average and 74 cents a mile over here on the West Coast. Okay. Yeah, because fuel just went up by like a yeah, the fuel prices just went up by like $1 a mile over the last week. So yeah, the fuel surcharge has gone up dramatically. It sounds like maybe they haven't updated their fuel surcharge or something. So yeah, can we talk to them and get it closer to like 70 cents a mile? Mm-hmm. Okay, is there any extra pay that you can get on there for me? Wow. Okay. Let me do the math on this and see see if I'm going to make any money on this because like the fuel is really high right now. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye. He was not rude about it. I don't know. I don't know if you can hear what he's saying. Um, but he's basically told me that he they can't negotiate. They said that these are their contract prices and they cannot negotiate the prices at all. This is the reason I don't typically try to negotiate at Landstar. I've had people get really rude in my comments about me not negotiating whenever I book loads. I almost always run contract freight. I don't want to deal with spot market crap. If I run a spot market load, I do negotiate, typically. But contract loads, like these agents, they'll get really defensive if you try to negotiate with them because they're contracts. Like these are the contract rates. If they pay extra, it usually has to come out of their cut on the contract or they have to try to renegotiate with the customer. And the customer, if they have a contract for like set rates, then they usually won't do it. So what they're telling me is that the fuel surcharge is determined by Geld Win, the company that they have the contract with, and they don't go by Landstar's fuel surcharge. Landstar's fuel surcharge right now is 62 cents a mile national average. And wait, let me pull it back up. Yeah, 74 cents a mile over on the West Coast. So since I'm going to be driving on both the West Coast and the central part of the country, my fuel surcharge should be somewhere in between there. It should be closer to like 70 cents a mile, and I'm only getting 49 cents a mile. So the mileage on this load is um 3,029 miles. So let's look at what kind of money I'm losing out on. 3,029 times 0.21. I'm missing out on about $636 of fuel surcharge. That's a lot of money. All right, so I don't think that there's anything. I'm going to have to be careful not to go off of this page, but let me flip you over. I was planning on this being a fuel, an Iran, but it looks like this is going to be a video about me booking a load because I just, happened to get a load as soon as I started the video, which is crazy because I've been sitting here trying to get a load for almost 2 weeks, and then it just happens when I make this video. All right, so I'm going to try to remember not to scroll on this page because there's some, information I don't want you to see on this page. Addresses and phone numbers and stuff like that. All right, so let's do some math. These things pay next to nothing on the line haul. They only pay $2.15 a mile. These are absurdly cheap loads on the line haul. All of the money on these loads comes from the stop pay and the driver unload pay, which they're also being really cheap on. So these are cheap loads. So let's do some math on this and figure out how much I'm going to make on this load. So fuel line haul $6,512. Well, that let me turn the light on so I can see the keyboard. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. So 6512.35 times 0.65, $4,233.02 rounds up to 3 cents. Okay, and then I get 100% of the fuel surcharge, which is $14.84 plus $14.84.21. That brings it up to $5,717. Plus, I get 100% of the unloading pay, which is $800. $6,517. Plus, I get 65% of the stop pay. So let's do 1550 times 0.65. That's $1,007.50. And let's look at the history of this. So let's do plus 6517 2375. 517 2375. So, of the $10,346, what I'm going to get paid gross to the truck is $7,524.73 rounded up to 74 cents. I don't know if they're going to round up or round down. I don't know what they're going to do on this. $7,524. Sounds really good, but this is a 31 extra stop load. So that means there's 32 total deliveries over 3,000 miles, and this load is scheduled for probably close to 2 weeks. Let me see if it's still pulled up on my phone here. The 13th through the 23rd, so 10 days, a week and a half. So it's not bad money, it's not good money. With fuel prices where they're at, this could actually be really bad. With a really big mileage load like this, 3,000 miles, this could end up being pretty bad. So this load is picking up on the 13th, which is Friday. Okay. And this load is delivering across, I'm not 100% sure because the map on the phone is all kinds of jacked up. It looks like it's delivering across Nebraska and Kansas. And the way they have this thing, I'm going to have to map this out because the way they have this thing set up is just absolutely ridiculous. Because it looks like they have it set up to where I'm just driving back and forth. But yeah, I'm going to have to bust out a map and look at the deliveries. That's going to take hours, so I won't do that in this video. So 7,524. Let's see, what am I making per mile? $2.48 a mile is what I'm making gross to the truck. So that's pretty good on a mileage rate, but a big chunk of that is going to go into fuel. Because of the fuel prices being what they are, let's just do like a rough, like how much extra is this going to cost me in fuel versus a normal. So it's roughly 3,000 miles, and at 6 miles per gallon, that's 500 gallons of fuel, right? Is that right? 3,000 miles divided by 6, that's 500. So it's gonna cost me about 500 gallons of fuel to do this load, approximately. Ballpark 500 gallons, and fuel is about $1 more than usual. It's closer to $1.25 more than usual. It really depends on the place. Let me look at fuel prices real quick. Let me show you some. So right here, it's $4.20 a gallon where I'm parked at right now. Whereas before, yeah, this is like closer to $1.50 a gallon, more expensive than normal where I'm at right now. Let's go check another place that I'm familiar with, Oklahoma City, and see how much more expensive it is than normal. Right now, my cheapest fuel in Oklahoma City is $3.65 a gallon. Holy crap. So that fuel in Oklahoma City was around 225. We'll say 230 a gallon. 230 a gallon. So Oklahoma City is $1.35 a gallon. More expensive than normal. And these are just my discounted price that I'm looking at. And it also does not include um, uh, fuel tax. Oklahoma fuel tax is around 20 cents a gallon. Oklahoma and Texas are both at around 20 cents a gallon. All right, Amarillo was about 215 to 220 a gallon, and it's 356 a gallon. So Amarillo is, let's say, 220. That's $1.35 a gallon. Is that right? Yeah, it's $1.35, $1.36 a gallon more expensive than normal. Um, so yeah, it's somewhere in the ballpark of like $1.40, $1.50 a gallon. We'll say $1.50 a gallon on average across the country is how much fuel has gone up in the past approximately month. Because fuel prices did not just spike whenever the United States and Israel attacked Iran. People were anticipating the attack. Fuel prices actually started rising almost a month before the attack happened because the United States started moving, um, you know, military assets into the region, and people thought that there was a possibility that they were going to attack Iran. And fuel prices started going up in anticipation of that. And as it became more likely, fuel prices went up more and more. So once we got within like the last week, fuel prices went up by like 20 or 30 cents a gallon in the last week, but they were going up for about a month before we attacked. So yeah, the prices on the day that we attacked, a lot of people think that the little spike that we got, fuel went up by like 5 or 10 cents a gallon the first day or two after we attacked. And then whenever the straight traffic stopped in the Strait of Hormuz because insurance companies stopped insuring through the Strait of Hormuz, Then we saw the huge, like 75 cents a gallon increase. So yeah, it sucks. So okay, 500, and we'll say $1.50 a gallon. So times 1.5, I'm going to pay approximately an extra $750 in fuel than I normally would on this load. So I'm going to lose about $750 on this load if the fuel prices stay where they're at right now. So I'm going to make $750 less than what I would normally make with fuel prices being where they're at right now. That's not my total fuel cost. That's just how much extra I'm going to pay for fuel. So, what is the average cost it's going to cost me for fuel? It's, oh my goodness. What would be my average cost for fuel? It's going to be, let me see what, let me check fuel at a couple other places. So Boise, it's 376. Three 70, 350. $90, 70, 70. So it looks like some of the cheapest fuel I'm going to be able to find on this route is, um, like there's one place that is much cheaper than everywhere else, and that appears to be Laramie at 340 a gallon. That is not including fuel tax. Let's see what the fuel tax is there. 24 cents a gallon. So on average, fuel tax is probably around 25 cents a gallon. Oklahoma and Texas have cheap fuel taxes like 20 cents a gallon. California is over $1 a gallon fuel tax. So if we just do 25 cents a gallon for fuel tax, and most of these places I'm going to be fueling up at are like 370 a gallon. And here in Portland, it's 420 a gallon. I'm going to have to put in, I'm going to have to almost fill the tank up here in Portland to be able to make it to Boise. So I'm going to be putting in like 100 gallons of fuel here, and that's going to be 420 plus whatever their fuel tax is here, probably close to, I don't know what Portland's fuel tax is, what Oregon's fuel tax is. So, if we go with 25 cents a gallon, then that's 445 a gallon I'm going to be paying for fuel here. So on average, I would say my average fuel cost is going to be close to $4 a gallon across this route. So it's going to cost me $2,000 in fuel. At $4 a gallon, 500 gallons, it's going to cost me approximately $2,000 in fuel. So of the $7,500, was it, that I'm going to make on this load? Where was it at? $7,524. $2,000 of that's going to go to fuel, and that'll leave me with $5,500 after fuel. So, anyway, let's go back to the load board here, and let me actually refresh it, and then we'll start scrolling through it again, and then we'll go back to the original plan of talking about Iran and fuel prices. Did this thing refresh or not? Nothing happened on the page. All right, we're going to start scrolling. So, fuel prices. Nobody knows what is going to happen with this war. You can make educated guesses as to what's going to happen, but nobody really knows for sure what's going to happen with this war. There's a lot of possibilities. Um, and whenever you have uncertainty, that creates volatility. What do businesses do whenever there's uncertainty, whenever there's volatility? They get conservative. Businesses will reduce spending whenever there's volatility, whenever there's uncertainty. Somebody backing in next to me. So there is likely going to be a reduction in freight volume for several reasons. One is uncertainty, volatility. Businesses will not buy things that they don't need to buy. They will put off upgrading and replacing stuff. Um, People also, whenever things get expensive, whenever fuel prices go up and they don't have as much extra money, they will reduce spending in other places. You know, they're having to spend extra money in fuel. You know, they're spending an extra like $50 or $100 a week in fuel. That wipes out a lot of their money that they could be spending on other things. So it's just going to, high fuel prices typically lead to lower freight volume. It leads to high fuel prices are really bad for the economy. Low fuel prices are really good for the economy. The economy will boom whenever there's low fuel prices because our civilization is based on petroleum. Our advanced technology that we need to survive as a civilization, we can't have 9 billion people on this planet without our advanced technology. There's just we can't have that many. We consume too much. We require too much space, too much food. Human beings just can't naturally there can't naturally be 9 billion of us on this planet. There's not enough resources. So it's only with our advanced technology that's based on petroleum that we can have this many human beings on the planet. So whenever the availability of petroleum goes down, cost goes up, that reduces, everything. It reduces the amount of food that's produced. It reduces the amount of everything. Everything gets more expensive. Everything gets harder to get. It's just bad for everything. So right now, that's the reason prices are going up so dramatically, is because of the fear that that reality could happen. It hasn't actually happened, but it could happen. So we're not seeing high fuel prices because we're running out of fuel. We're seeing high fuel prices because they think that we might run out of fuel in the near future, or it might become more expensive in the near future. It's a futures market. It's a guessing game. It's emotion based. To give you an idea of how emotion based that it is, we saw a dramatic increase in fuel prices over a few days because of the Strait of Hormuz basically shutting down. And 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which most of that oil goes to Asia. It doesn't come to the United States. It almost all goes to Asia. But we live in a global economy. So if there's a shortage in Asia, what does Asia do? They go buy up oil from some other market. So it doesn't matter where the shortage is at, it'll affect the entire global market. So the fuel is a big part of the problem. The economy, which impacts the freight market, is another big part of the problem. What are we looking at? What is, like, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen. I can make an educated guess. And what is my educated guess as to what is going to happen? Trump and his regime is going around telling people that everything is great, everything is awesome, there's nothing to be worried about. We're going to have more oil than we know what to do with because we've installed a puppet government in Venezuela, and we signed contracts with Venezuela, and we're going to start importing oil from Venezuela, whereas up to this point, we've been sanctioning Venezuela. Um, Also, something that almost no one is talking about is Guyana, the country right next door to Venezuela, has just has like there's been massive oil discoveries in Guyana that could potentially be some of the largest, if not the largest, in the world. And that is probably one of the reasons why we kidnapped Maduro, is because Venezuela was in the process of trying to basically take over Guyana because of those oil reserves that were discovered there. That is something that no one talks about. Like there's reality, and then there's the narrative that the government puts out. And the narrative the government puts out is just made to influence public opinion. It's not reality. Whenever you understand what's really going on behind the scenes, I mean, the government, like politicians, just tell you whatever they think they need to tell you to get you to go along with whatever they want to do. It's just, they've gotten to the point where they just blatantly lie. Do you remember Trump a year ago at the end of the 12-day war? He said that they had completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program, and it would take decades for them to, rebuild it. Was that true? No. No. They did almost no damage to Iran's nuclear program. And to this day, they keep spewing lies like that, talking about how we've just utterly destroyed Iran. Like every day, I'm hearing someone from the United States government come out and say that we've utterly destroyed Iran, and like there's nothing left of Iran, and we've already won this war and stuff like that. That is not true. Iran has been under threat of attack from the United States and Israel for decades. And because of that, they have moved everything underground. Everything that is vital to Iran is in deep underground military bases. Their nuclear program, their missile program, their drone program, all of that stuff is in deep underground military bases. We can't destroy that stuff with Tomahawk missiles. It's like, I don't know how deep exactly they are, but they're like 100 feet underground or something like that. They're really deep. Even with our bunker buster bombs, whenever we did at the end of the 12-day war, whenever we made that spectacle of dropping bunker buster bombs on Iran, which was absolutely absurd, it accomplished almost nothing. Even with our bunker buster bombs, what they had to do to try to hit these facilities, and they were not successful, they found ventilation shafts, what they thought were ventilation shafts, and they dropped multiple bunker buster bombs in the exact same spot of the ventilation shaft, hoping that it would get down deep enough to destroy these underground facilities. Did they destroy them? No. Like the day after the bombing, they had I don't know if these are things that like get very little media attention because they have a narrative that they're pushing in the media, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous to have the president and other people come out there saying that we absolutely destroyed their nuclear program, and then the very next day there were satellite images of trucks like taking stuff out of this deep underground military base that was supposedly destroyed. People were going in the base in the entrance and then coming back out with stuff and removing it from the base. So yeah, it wasn't destroyed. And how many of these bunker buster bombs do we have? Somewhere, I think that there's only ever been like 30 ever manufactured. That's like the estimate. Like the military doesn't give us exact numbers of anything. But the estimates are that there's only ever been about 30 of those bunker buster bombs ever made. And we used like 12 of them, 14 of them on that spectacle of the just worthless bombing of those deep underground military bases in Iran. It basically did nothing, and those are really expensive bombs. It was just purely a spectacle. It was put on for show. It accomplished nothing. But that's not what our government said. Our government said that we just completely destroyed, everything in Iran with 14 bunker buster bombs. What would it take to destroy these deep underground military bases? I don't know for sure. What I've heard from people who are supposedly experts, I've heard that it would take a nuclear weapon. It would take multiple nuclear weapons. Bunker buster bombs, they would have to drop so many bunker buster bombs to destroy these facilities. We just can't make enough bunker buster bombs to make that happen. They're just too expensive. They take too long to make. They're basically considered like a wonder weapon. And unfortunately, that's the direction the United States military has gone, is they have focused on wonder weapons. You remember back in World War II, one of the downfalls, one of the reasons that Germany lost the war was because of Adolf Hitler's fascination with wonder weapons. Adolf Hitler served in World War I, and the big invention of World War I was the tank. And it was terrifying to have an armored vehicle coming at you that you're shooting bullets at, and it's having no effect. Adolf Hitler dealt with that in World War I, and it had a massive impact on him. So whenever they were building weapons for World War II, he wanted wonder weapons. World War II, the Germans built some of the most crazy weapons. They were the first country to have like jets, jet aircraft. They weren't real, they were prototypes. Like, they had these incredible weapons that were prototypes. They weren't really useful in the war. One of the great examples of Germany focusing on wonder weapons instead of realistic weapons for the war were their tanks. The German tanks were the best in the world by a significant margin. The German tanks were absolutely phenomenal. But they were so resource intensive and so difficult to make that they had very few of them. How did Russia fight against Germany? And how did Russia win a tank war against Germany whenever they had far superior tanks? Germany won by making really easy to make tanks. I can't remember what the ratio was, but it was something like a single German tank was as good as like 5 or 10 Russian tanks. A single German tank could fight against 5 or 10 Russian tanks and win. But Russia could produce these tanks so easily that they just won through attrition. They just beat Germany through attrition. Germany could not produce their tanks as fast as Russia could. And, Russia won through attrition. Attrition and tactics. And unfortunately, that's the position the United States has gotten into, is we are focused on wonder weapons. We build things that are incredibly expensive. They take forever to build, and they're nearly impossible to replace. If we lose one, it's devastating. These are not armaments that are realistic for warfare. If you're fighting against third world countries and militias, or you're just out there stroking yourself off in front of your peer adversaries trying to intimidate them, then wonder weapons are amazing. But if you're fighting a real war against a peer adversary, or even a near peer adversary, then wonder weapons become useless really quick. Like our Tomahawk missiles. Our Tomahawk missiles, I would consider them to be a wonder weapon. They are extremely expensive. They're hard to make. I think last time I looked it up, I think I looked it up in my last video. I showed it on the video. There's only been like 4,200 Tomahawk missiles ever manufactured, or manufactured since 2000. I can't remember. We used over 800 Tomahawks in the second Gulf War. And they said that we used twice as many missiles so far bombing Iran than we did in the shock and awe campaign of the Gulf War. We've dropped or launched twice as many missiles on Iran. So what that tells me is that in the course of approximately a week, we have expended almost all of our Tomahawk missiles. Can you fight a war like that? If we're going to start running out of munitions within, a week or two of fighting, Iran's not a peer adversary. They're not even, I don't even think I would call Iran a near peer adversary. They're not a third world country, but I don't know what the proper term is to describe Iran. But if we're going to start running out of missiles after a week or two, and what Iran's strategy has been fighting against Israel and the United States is to launch a lot of cheap missiles at them to get them to run out of interceptor missiles. And then after they run out of interceptor missiles, then they start using the good stuff. And there is a massive... What in the hell was that? Just a second. There's a truck pulling out 2 spaces away. I think that was what that noise came from. It sounded like somebody... Like, these trucks... A truck hitting their brakes, like 2 spaces away from me, can rock my truck. Not even touching my truck. Like, these trucks are so big and so heavy. It's crazy what they can do. They can shake the ground around them. But there's a massive propaganda campaign. There's a massive amount of censorship going on right now. Like Israel. Israel is spewing a lot of propaganda that they're intercepting every missile, nothing's making it through. In Israel, you can go to jail for posting footage of bombs hitting. That's how bad the censorship is in Israel. It's nearly impossible to find footage of bombs hitting in Israel. The only place that I know of that you can find it is on Chinese social media. There are Chinese people in Israel that are posting on Chinese social media sites the bombs hitting. And there is video footage of the new cluster. They're not cluster bombs, they're MIRVs. Multiple independent reentry vehicles. It's basically a single missile that has a whole bunch of missiles, or not missiles, but I don't know if you call them artillery shells or bombs or what you'd call them. But it's the same design that we have with our nuclear missiles. Our nuclear missiles are almost all MIRVs, where it's one single large missile, and then once it starts coming back down on ballistic trajectory, then it opens up and a whole bunch of little missiles come out of it. Well, Iran has those on, their ballistic missiles as well, non-nuclear. And there's video footage that is easy to find of these MIRVs launching, and there's just tons of these missiles coming out at them, and you don't see any interceptors going up on them, and they're just raining down, but Israel does not allow people to show them actually hitting. You can find footage of them actually hitting on Chinese social media, and it is devastating. Every single one of those missiles coming out of them are they're really big explosives. I expected them to be fairly small explosives. They're all really big. And it is. It's like a cluster bomb of an area. It's just massive amounts of huge explosions hitting across Israel. It's devastating in Israel. Like I don't really know a lot about what's going on in Israel because it's so hard to find any information outside of the propaganda that they're putting out. But what little information I'm seeing leaked out that's making it through the censorship, Iran is bombing the shit out of Israel. And Israel and the United States are bombing the shit out of Iran. And I really haven't gotten any footage of what's going on with the bases. The propaganda machine out of Israel and the United States is basically portraying it as Iran is just lashing out against everyone in the region. And they're just bombing every country in the region, just indiscriminately bombing everyone. What the reality is that all of these countries that Iran is bombing are housing U.S. military assets. They have U.S. military bases in them, or air defense, or launchers, or troops, or whatever. And Iran is basically bombing U.S. military bases throughout the region that are in all of these countries. They are hitting some other places, but they're basically all of these countries are at war with Iran. I mean, if you, like, let's say that Canada went to war against Mexico and we were allowing Canada to build military bases along the Mexico border in the United States and put troops there and missile launchers and air defense and all that stuff, we would technically be at war with Mexico as well. Even if we weren't sending in troops ourselves or launching missiles ourselves, if we are allowing, all of that to take place from our land, then, we're part of it. Like, we should expect that we're going to be attacked on our land. It's just crazy that they're trying to spin this into Iran's just lashing out randomly at all their neighbors. That's not what's happening. The United States is in all of these countries. They've been invited into all of these countries. We're not, like, forcefully there. But the war is a lot worse than what the United States and Israel is portraying it to be. And Trump keeps going out and saying that the war is going to be over in a week or two or a day or two. I don't think that's true. There are some really, really scary rumors that I've heard about troops on the ground. That would be one of the dumbest decisions you could possibly make, is to send troops into Iran. Now, that's probably the only way that we could take out their deep underground military bases. Without nuclear weapons, I don't think it's possible to destroy their deep underground military bases. Like, take Gaza, for example. Hamas, supported by Iran, built deep underground military bases. Hamas was a couple hundred feet underground. Israel could not touch them. Israel never defeated Hamas because they were in these deep underground military bases, a couple hundred feet underground. So that's just Hamas. That's a militia group that probably dug these tunnels out by hand. Like, they dug out these deep underground military bases probably by hand. Compare that versus Iran, who's like an actual country with billions of dollars, maybe even trillions of dollars, and lots of resources. They can build some really nice deep underground military bases. So this, I'm not a military expert. I've never been in the military. I don't know much about the military, but I do have a functioning brain. And this whole war with Iran does not make sense to me. Our goal against Iran was to destroy their nuclear program and to destroy their uh, ballistic missile program, basically their entire missile program, and their drone program, and regime change. There were 4 objectives to this war. And most of those objectives were, just doing stuff for Israel. All of this was done on behalf of Israel. Iran doesn't pose a significant threat to the United States. Not a big enough threat to justify going to war with them. But they do pose a significant threat to Israel. That's the reason we're over there, is Israel. So with those 4 objectives, can we facilitate regime change by just bombing with missiles? No. Never been done. I'm not aware of that ever being done in the history of warfare. To overthrow a government by just dropping missiles on them. What about to destroy their nuclear weapons program that's in a deep underground military base? Doesn't seem possible to me. Not with conventional arms. It would take nuclear weapons. What about their missile weapon program and their drone weapon program that are also, all 3 of them are in deep underground military bases? We can't take them out with missiles. Like, why would we go to war with them if we have unachievable objectives? If we're not planning on putting troops on the ground, then how are we going to achieve these objectives? If we're not going to use nuclear weapons and we're not going to put troops on the ground, how do you achieve these objectives? What I think happened is the same thing that I think happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. You remember when Russia invaded Ukraine, all of the experts, like, we knew Russia was going to invade Ukraine. It was several months of troop buildup before they invaded. And then in the last 30 days before they invaded, they started moving blood to the front lines. And the experts were coming out and saying, okay, this is the sign that this attack is going to happen within 30 days because the blood is only good for 30 days. And they've moved massive amounts of blood to the front lines. So the experts were right on a lot of stuff, but what were they wrong about? They said that Russia would roll over Ukraine within 3 weeks. Ukraine could not stop Russia. They'll just roll over them within 3 weeks. Did that happen? No. We're in a multi-year long war, a never-ending war between Russia and Ukraine. Why? Well, if you look at how Russia invaded Ukraine, they basically just drove down the street in their vehicles, and there were tons and tons of reports of Russian soldiers just like rolling up at fuel stations, gas stations, and trying to refuel their vehicles at a gas station. And like just walking up to locals and being like, "Hey, we're getting low on fuel. Could you help us out?" Or, we're out of food. Would you mind helping us out? Russia went into Ukraine with the expectation that they would be seen as liberators. They didn't have a plan to fight a war against Ukraine. They thought that they were going to be going in as liberators. They thought that once they got in there, that the people would rally against them, and they would just be fighting against a small group of elite people that were, elite corrupt people like Zelensky, all these people that are making billions of dollars in Ukraine. They were just going to have to fight that small group. And Russia basically did push all the way to Kiev, or Kyiv, however you want to pronounce it. And on the pronunciation, you're going to, you hear people pronouncing it as Kiev and Kyiv. It's my understanding that Kiev is basically the birthplace of Russia. And as a big fuck you to Russia, Ukraine renamed it Kyiv. That's my understanding of the history of Kiev. But anyway, Russia basically pushed all the way to Kiev within the first, week or two of two. I'm not sure exactly how long it took. It was in the early days of the war, first couple of weeks, and they signed, or I don't know. I'm not sure if they actually signed the peace agreement, but they had a peace deal with Ukraine, and NATO talked Ukraine out of it. And they basically had an agreement. I'm not sure if it was a signed agreement, but Russia pulled back because they had that agreement. Russia had pushed all the way to Kiev, and they pulled way back because of that agreement. And then NATO brought in a whole bunch of armaments into Ukraine and probably a bunch of advisors. And then Ukraine pulled out of the agreement and started fighting against Russia. So Russia went into that under the false assumption that they would be seen as liberators and that the people would rise up and support them. I think that that is the same assumption that the United States made when they attacked Iran. One of the things you keep hearing from Trump is telling the people of Iran to, take their country, and basically telling the people to rise up and take the country. We're destroying the leadership. We're destroying the government. The people need to rise up and take the government, take over their country. So I think that they really thought that we could just simply use missiles to kill off the leadership in the country, and then the people would rise up and take over the country. And that is not what is happening. That's just really dumb that they thought that that's what would happen. But that seems to be what they thought would happen. And now they're starting to realize that's not going to happen. And now they're starting to look at alternatives. They're thinking about arming the Kurds. We probably have Army Special Forces, which specializes in guerrilla warfare. We probably have Army Special Forces over there training and arming the Kurds as we speak. They're trying to figure out a way to do this without putting U.S. troops on the ground. And when I say U.S. troops, I mean basic military units. I'm not talking about like special operations. Special operations are already there. I'm fairly certain that there are, you know, secret military people or secret government contractors or whatever you want to call them that are in the country already. I'm not talking about that type of troops on the ground. I'm talking about basic military units, putting in the 82nd Airborne, stuff like that. That is a nightmare scenario. And that appears to be what they're thinking about doing, is putting troops on the ground. They're starting to realize that their initial plan didn't work. And now the time frame that I'm hearing is September. It's going to take until September to win this war if we put troops on the ground. Now, that is a best case scenario because it's going to take weeks, possibly months, just to get the troops in country. And then they're going to have to achieve their objectives, and then we have to take weeks to get them back out of the country and get them back over to the US. So, this time frame of September, I think that's a best case scenario where they're just able to go in there and do everything. Everything just goes perfect. Everything just goes like this utopian ideology where everything's just going to happen perfectly. I think that the September time frame is a utopian ideal that is not realistic. If we put troops on the ground, I think we could be stuck in Iran for, another 20 years. It could turn into another Vietnam, another Afghanistan, another Iraq. And it's just, I really, 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 really hope that we don't put troops on the ground. I really hope we don't put troops on the ground. That is a scary scenario. And aside from the rumors of the U.S. talking about putting troops on the ground, one of the things that's going around is the 82nd Airborne, I think based out of Germany. They had some exercise canceled, a training exercise or something, so that they could go into a ready state. And also in Germany, I think they started asking for blood donations for the potential for upcoming need. So there are things happening that gives some support to the rumor that the United States is considering putting troops on the ground. And because of that rumor, there has been a surge in searches about drafting, about drafts, about a military draft. Which, there are people out there that are making fun of all of this. They ridicule it. They talk about how stupid it is. The thought of us putting troops on the ground in Iran is just conspiracy theory nonsense. And we're not going to have a draft, so people getting, all these kids getting worried about the draft are a bunch of idiots that don't know what's going on. There are people out there that are spewing that kind of rhetoric. I agree that it would be idiotic for us to put troops on the ground. Is it unlikely that our government would do something idiotic? No. Our government does stupid stuff all the time. Just because it's stupid doesn't mean our government's not going to do it. It would be really stupid for us to put boots on the ground in Iran. But it's looking like our government is seriously considering it. And if we do put boots on the ground in Iran, would there be a potential for a draft? Yes. There is a huge potential for a draft if we put boots on the ground in Iran. The current size of our military is probably not sufficient to fight a ground war in Iran. So we would need to ramp up the size of our military, and we are not going to have a lot of volunteers. Most people disagree with this war. There's not like a lot of support for this war. A lot of people realize that we're just doing this for Israel. And yes, we do have this radical fringe element in the United States, these like ultra religious people who feel that like they're the radical members of the Christian doomsday cult. Most Christians, they are just like everyday normal people, but the like radical members of the cult, they think it's their duty to bring about the second coming of Jesus and to support Israel because there's all these doomsday prophecies that have to happen, where the Temple Mount has to be rebuilt, and like I can't remember all their doomsday prophecy crap. But we have a lot of these radicals in positions of leadership and power that are influencing this. They want all this stuff to happen. So I'm not going to put it past anyone that something stupid like this couldn't possibly happen. And a draft would be likely if we put boots on the ground. It would be highly likely. Our military is just not big enough to fight a real war. It's something that our military leaders have been talking about for several years, decades probably, is that the size of our military needs to go up dramatically if, like, there's a realistic possibility that we're going to go to war with China in the near future. And our military cannot fight a war against China. It's not designed for that type of warfare. Our military is designed for fighting third world countries, militias, and having wonder weapons to intimidate near peer adversaries and nuclear weapons for mutually assured destruction. Our military doesn't think we're ever going to fight a peer adversary like Russia or China because of mutually assured destruction and our wonder weapons and our intimidation factor of our wonder weapons. Our aircraft carriers used to be a wonder weapon, but with the advancement of missile and drone technology, aircraft carriers are almost an obsolete weapon. They're so vulnerable to missiles and drones, and they are so expensive. There's so many resources inside an aircraft carrier. On average, I think they have 75 jets on them. They have about 5,000 soldiers and then tremendous amounts of supplies. If you take out an aircraft carrier, you're basically destroying a massive military base. So they're just a juicy target in warfare. Even countries like Iran have the capability of sinking our aircraft carriers. That's the reason our aircraft carriers are setting out like 1,000 miles off the coast of Iran. They can't get within range of Iran's missiles. Um, Otherwise, they risk being sunk. And I think the operational range of the jets is only like 150 or 250 miles or something like that. So these aircraft carriers are outside the operational range of the jets. So the jets are having to do mid-air refueling to be able to go on missions. So it makes the aircraft carrier almost worthless because we have to bring in a whole bunch of air tankers, these fuel tankers, to be able to support these aircraft carriers because they're having to park so far off the coast that the jets can't make it all the way to their targets. The United States is not dominating Iran as badly as the US and Israel propaganda machines are portraying. Both sides are getting their noses, bloodied. And I don't think either side wants this war to continue. But right now, at this point, both sides basically want each side to completely surrender. Iran, in order for them to stop uh, their attacks, they basically want all sanctions removed, and they want like everything to stop, and they want a promise that they're never going to be attacked again, and they're going to be able to do whatever the hell they want, and the U.S. and Israel is not going to bother them. That is not a condition that the U.S. and Israel is going to agree to. And on the other side, the U.S. and Israel want complete surrender, complete unconditional surrender from Iran, which is also something Iran is not going to do. So right now, the expectations for ending this war on both sides are unrealistic. And neither side trusts the other. So even if one side agreed to the terms of the other side, it probably wouldn't end the war because they just don't trust each other. So, my theory is that this war could go on for a long time. Or both sides could just kind of stop. We could have a ceasefire. The United States is hurting, Israel is hurting, Iran is hurting. All of them are hurting. And then all the Gulf Coast countries that were promised that they would be protected by the United States are also hurting. I'm sure that they're a little pissed off the United States that all these bombs are hitting their countries because I'm highly like I'm quite certain that the United States made some promises to these countries that they would defend them. And with as arrogant as the United States is, with like listen to our leaders and in their level of arrogance. Could you imagine what it sounded like whenever they were telling, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and all these places that they were going to protect them if they, let us use their land to launch our missiles and put our air defense and put our military bases and all that stuff. And then all these bombs are landing, all these drones are hitting, and they're sitting there thinking, you know what? We're not as safe as the U.S. said we would be. Their air defense is not quite as amazing as they told us it was. They told us it was basically impenetrable. It's like Israel talking about the Iron Dome, and they're so proud of the Iron Dome, and they have this propaganda, this marketing behind it, where they portray it as like some Israeli Iron Dome. It's the Israeli Iron Dome, like it's made in Israel. It's not. It's made in the USA. It's U.S. missiles. If we stop supplying missiles to Israel for their Iron Dome, then their Iron Dome stops working. It's Israel is a really weak military. They are completely reliant on the United States. But I'm gonna give you hope for the worst plan, or hope for the worst, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Let's think about best case scenario, and let's not go quite worst case scenario, but bad scenario. So best case scenario is that within the next few days, the United States, Israel, and Iran all agree to a ceasefire and to um, can go back to talks. I don't think that's likely to happen. That's like best case scenario, but I don't think it's likely to happen because this is the exact same thing that happened on the 12-day war. Iran started hurting Israel really bad in the 12-day war because they did the exact same thing that they did this time. They expended a whole bunch of cheap missiles to use up their interceptors, and then they started using their good missiles. Once they wore out their air defenses and ran them low on interceptors, then they started using their good missiles and knocking out their airfields and their interceptors and all that stuff. And Israel was basically begging for them to stop. And, you know, everybody agreed to a ceasefire. Well, what did Israel do? Israel rearmed, and then they talked the United States into attacking Iran again. So is Iran going to fall for that again? Are they going to fall for Israel basically calling for another ceasefire so that they can, rearm and repair and get ready to attack them again? No. So the best case scenario is unlikely to happen. Iran is not likely going to agree to a ceasefire without something in writing, some type of very specific terms that are, it's going to be hard for either side to trust each other. So I'm not sure how they're going to come up with a deal, but they're going to have to come up with something that both sides can agree on and trust each other on to end this. Um, I just don't see it happening. And the new leader of Iran, Khomeini's son or grandson, whatever he is supposedly much more radical than Khomeini was. Much more radical. I think he was a member of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is one of the Iran has basically two militaries. They have the religious military, which is the IRGC, and then they have their regular standard military. The IRGC is more like a special operations military, and the regular Iranian military, I think they're kind of like the National Guard, which is kind of like just designed to defend the country, where the IRGC is like their expeditionary military that's special ops that, you know, uh, does guerrilla warfare outside the country and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Iran's military, but the IRGC, from everything I know, is like an ultra religious military. Like everybody in the IRGC is like really, really religious. So, like they're zealots. And Khomeini, I'm fairly certain was a member of the IRGC, the son or grandson, the current leader of Iran. So Trump is pissed off about the leader that was chosen because they went from bad to worse, and it looks like the IRGC leadership has a lot of say in who the leader will be of Iran. So they're even if they kill the current leader, they're just going to bring in another zealot into the leadership position because it appears that the IRGC is in control of Iran. So that's basically an entire military. So they would have to destroy the IRGC to be able to have regime change. It just, I don't know why we would start a war like this without a plan on how to win it. Because if we went in there with the plan that we were just going to kill a whole bunch of their leaders and then the people were going to rise up and overthrow the government, like that just doesn't make any damn sense. Is that really what our plan was? That's pretty crazy if that's what it was. But that appears to be what our plan was. I don't think a war has ever been won by just launching missiles from afar. We were trying to reinvent the wheel or something. I don't know what was taking place with this war. But let me pause this. Let's see what the current news of the day is, because who knows? Maybe we did win the war by launching missiles. Let's check and see what the news headline is right now, because it's happening as we speak. No, I don't see anything in the news. Well, let's backpedal a little bit there. Let's not call it news. Anything in the media, mainstream media, the state-run media. I'm not seeing anything in there of any useful information. It's all political propaganda crap. The big news of the moment is that some people in the U.S. government made a post on X.com that U.S. warships had been escorting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And then that post got deleted, and Iran came out and made a statement that no U.S. warship has dared enter the Persian Gulf or the Strait of Hormuz or anywhere near that area. And just basically, it's the United States making claims and Iran making claims and Israel making claims, and then finding out that they're liars. Like, all three, major, like, there's more than just those three countries involved in this war. But those three countries, they're all like pathological liars, it appears. They're all making statements that just are blatantly false. Like, it's really easy to disprove the ridiculous crap that they're spewing. One of the things that I'm really ashamed of is the bombing of that school. Killed like 175 people in Iran. It is apparently near a military base, so it appears to have been just, I don't know, a missed target or a failure in the missile. I don't think it was targeted on purpose, but the U.S. government has been adamantly denying that they bombed the school, and has been saying that Iran is the one who bombed it. And there is video footage going around. I don't know if it's real. I mean, there's AI footage out there in the world today. It's very difficult to tell what's real and not because of these fake videos and how good they are. But there is video footage out there of the missile hitting the school, and the video footage that's out shows that it is a Tomahawk missile that hit that school. And Trump was asked about that. Trump has been saying that we didn't bomb it. It was Iran that bombed it. And then Trump was asked about this video footage that came out that shows it was a Tomahawk missile. And then Trump said, well, It's we're not the only ones who have tomahawks. We sell tomahawks to everybody. So even Iran has tomahawk missiles, which I don't think is true. It sounds like a complete load of bullshit that was made up on the spot. And then somebody asked a follow-up question to Trump, trying to get some clarity on his response, where he was adamantly denying. And they were like, you know, so you're saying that Iran blew it up with their own Tomahawk missile? And Trump said, I don't know what happened. I think they're investigating it, and I don't think it was us. The truth. We finally get the truth out of him. He how it piss. I can't stand liars. To come out and state something as fact that you don't know. Trump has been adamantly denying and blaming Iran for that school. And then finally, after, asked multiple times, he finally admits the truth, that he has no fucking idea what's going on and he's just making shit up. Sorry for the language, but it pisses me off. Like, I'm mad that we're fighting against Iran right now on behalf of Israel. There is zero reason why U.S. troops should be in harm's way fighting a war for Israel. That pisses me off. And I'm pissed off that we blew up a school, an elementary school, and killed a whole bunch of kids. Not just kids, the teachers, janitors. Like, I don't want to say that, any one life is more precious than the other. Just because they're kids, their life is more meaningful than the teacher's life. But, I mean, it was mainly kids that were there. And people perceive children to be innocent. Like, it's like, why kill kids? Um, but I think that the janitor was just as innocent as the kid that got killed. So I don't know. It all pisses me off. It shouldn't be happening in the first place, and I'm pissed off that the United States, a country that I live in, that I'm a citizen of, that I pay taxes, I'm supporting this effort through my taxes and, working, being a productive member of this country. Uh, it I am in some way supporting all of this, and it pisses me off. This is like, we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be doing this. But I suspect. All right, so best case scenario is unlikely. What about worst case scenario? We'll go worst case, and then we'll go realistic scenario. What's the worst case? Well, let's not go worst case. Worst case is nuclear. Um, let's go a realistic worst case scenario that doesn't go like full on nuclear. One of the bad case scenarios, maybe not worst case scenarios, but one of the bad case scenarios is if we put troops on the ground in Iran. Um, that would be nothing like Iraq or Afghanistan. Iraq, Iraq's military was like nothing. Afghanistan didn't have a military. It's just, tribes. Um, Iran has like a modern military. For us to put troops on the ground in Iran, it would be like Russia invading Ukraine. Like, it would probably turn into trench warfare, which is attrition-based warfare. It just depends on how quickly we could, push them back. If we took our time, then it could turn into trench warfare. But if we overwhelm them with a blitzkrieg, then, maybe we could avoid it turning into trench warfare. But that would be one of the worst case scenarios, is if we put troops on the ground. Uh, this has already been bubbling up into a regional conflict. We have Hezbollah attacking Israel. Israel is fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran and the United States are fighting each other. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. Um, I think Iraq is involved in this. Um, Bahrain, Qatar. The Houthis in Yemen have they're like thinking about joining in this conflict and starting to like shoot missiles uh, at vessels over at the Strait of Bab al Mandab or whatever it is, the strait that goes through the Suez Canal, the entrance to the Suez Canal, which is another really critical artery in the world economy, the global supply chain. And here's the really big thing about the Middle East that nobody's really talking about: food and water. The Middle East has a lot of oil. They don't have much of anything else. So they have enough money to buy lots of food and lots of water. Someone bombed one of Iran's desalination plants. It's not really clear exactly who bombed it. No one is taking credit for it, and everybody's blaming each other for it. Supposedly it was Bahrain. That's the rumor I heard, is the Bahrain bombed Iran's desalination plant. And Iran is saying that if you're going to start attacking civilian infrastructure, we're going to start attacking civilian infrastructure. So we're getting close to that escalation point where civilian infrastructure is going to start getting targeted. I hope it doesn't get there. That will be a major escalation. Attacking civilian infrastructure, especially like water and power, is really close to the same level as dropping a nuke on a country. If you were to knock out the power to a country, it would cause large scale loss of life. Every study that I've ever heard of, and there's a worm farmer that used to live in Huntsville, Alabama. Now he lives in Snowflake, Arizona, I think is the name of the town that he lives in. Green Greg, worm farmer. You should go check out his channel. He has some really awesome content about the United States power grid. So why should you go like check out Green Greg and hear what a worm farmer has to say about the power grid? Well, Greg Allison used to be a NASA contractor, and he's also been on a bunch of like power grid committees trying to talk the government into hardening our power grid against EMP weapons and coronal mass ejections from the sun, electromagnetic pulse weapons, and CMEs, coronal mass ejections from the sun. It is something that is going to happen. The sun, has these CMEs that happen on a fairly like a cycle, a regular basis, and every study that's ever been done about what the effect would be for a large-scale, long-term loss of power, all the studies have come to the same conclusion. At least 90% of the population would die within 6 months to a year. Why? Because our civilization is dependent on our advanced technology to live. Our advanced technology is petroleum based. Without it, we will die. We can't like if it was just me and there was no other human being around for 100 miles and I had survival skills, like I knew how to survive off the land, I could survive. But if it's me and 3 million other people in a major metropolitan area, we will consume all of the resources as far out as we can, and we will die. There's not enough resources for us to live. Like, we will resort to cannibalism. We rely on the industrialized agriculture to feed us. We rely on waste management and water treatment to be able to deal with our waste and to recycle the water. And otherwise, like, we just can't have populations this big. If they start attacking infrastructure, desalination plants, power plants in the Middle East, you're talking about the potential for large scale loss of life. It would get very chaotic over there. That is a level that no one has really gone to in any of these wars. No one has been has been attacking power plants except Ukraine. I think Ukraine has been attempting to attack power plants over in Russia. Ukraine is just desperate. They're attacking everything. If Ukraine had a nuke, they would have already launched it. Ukraine is the most desperate country in the world right now, probably. And they will use anything at their disposal. They will attack anything that they can. So the other thing is that Israel, in my opinion, is the most aggressive country in the world. If Iran attacks Israel infrastructure like power plants, Israel might launch a nuke against them. Like, that's a real possibility. Israel is insanely aggressive. If I had to bet my life on which country is going to launch the next nuclear weapon, it would be Israel. Israel is the most aggressive country in the world. So that is always a really big fear. We have crossed, like, up to this point, we've had the fear of escalation. And I think people have become numb to escalation because it's something we're always talking about, the escalation ladder. And nobody ever really goes up the escalation ladder because of the fear of escalation. We are seeing escalation actually happening in this war. Infrastructure has been attacked, desalination plants, water treatment. That's basically a water treatment facility. And that's how the Middle East gets their water, is desalination plants. Like, these are deserts. That's where they get their water from. Now, Iran is not as much of a desert as, the other Gulf Coast nations. The terrain of Iran is very different than like Saudi Arabia and UAB and Qatar and all those places. Those are mainly flatland deserts. Iran is very mountainous, and they actually have a decent amount of water in Iran. They don't have enough water to, support the population in Iran. They still need desalination plants. I think the number that I saw is that Iran has 70% of the water needed for their population. And the Saudi Arabia and those other countries basically have zero water. They're almost completely reliant on desalination plants. So it's not as devastating to Iran to have a desalination plant taken out. If desalination plants get taken out for Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAB, Kuwait, those places, that is really devastating to them. So we've crossed another escalation, spot on the ladder with the attack of infrastructure. Now, right now, what happened was a water treatment facility was bombed, and now everybody went, "Whoa!" And they're all kind of sitting back, waiting to see what happens. They're like, "Is everybody going to start attacking infrastructure now?" So we're in this like everybody's kind of gasping, and we're all sitting back, and we're like, "Whoa, what's going to happen now?" And everybody's just waiting to see what's going to happen. And it looks like Iran is trying to de-escalate, because Iran came out and made a statement recently, while I was making this video. They came out and made a statement. Whenever I was checking the news a few minutes ago, I read a statement from Iran where they said that If other countries are going to attack their infrastructure, then they are going to let me let me just switch this over to just me. Let me switch over and let me pull it up. I don't want to misquote this. Um, I'm trying to find the source where it's actually quoted. It looks like that it might actually be 13 hours old. There, it's listed as like the. Let me show you what I'm looking at. On Al Jazeera, which is a state-run media of, I think, Qatar. Iran war live. Tehran vows eye for an eye if U.S. Israel hit infrastructure. If U.S. Israel hit, I want to see exactly how it's worded because that sounds like a de-escalation right there. They're saying if you do it again, we are going to attack your infrastructure. But anyway, I don't want to spend 30 minutes trying to find their account and seeing exactly what they said. Another thing that I saw a few minutes ago is that oil prices are down by like 13% today. They went from $90 to $80 a barrel. So what have oil prices done during this? They've about a month ago, oil prices were at like $58 a barrel, or we'll say $60 a barrel. Yesterday, they got up to $120 a barrel. The price of oil doubled over the last month. And then Trump came out and made a whole bunch of statements saying, "Oh, the war is, we're probably going to end it really soon. We basically already won." He's doing the Bush thing. Remember, right after we invaded Iraq, George Bush went out onto an aircraft carrier and they had a big victory sign behind him, claiming that they had achieved victory after our shock and awe campaign of like a month. Was like, were we victorious over Iraq in a week or a month or however long it was? No, that war went on for like a decade or more. Um, I can't remember when the Iraq War ended, if it ever did. um, but yeah, Trump's doing the same thing. He's claiming victory after our initial opening attack. He's claiming that we've already beat Iran. Is that true? No, we have not defeated Iran. They've claimed that we've knocked out their launchers, so they can't launch missiles anymore. And Iran released videos that their good missiles don't require launchers. They just set them on the ground and they launch straight off the ground. They don't require launchers. Their old crap uses those launchers. The old crap that they've been using to saturate the interceptors with, and run the U.S. and Israel out of interceptors. Those use those launchers, but their nice new stuff, they're not dependent on those launchers because that's something that's a big problem with the U.S. military is that we have these we're really reliant on things that are hard to replace that we don't have very many of, like air fuel tankers. Um, Me not being a military mastermind, I'm well aware that the U.S. is extremely dependent on air fuel tankers. That is one of the worst things that you could possibly take out in the U.S. military is an air fuel tanker because all of our jet aircraft has very like they burn so much fuel they can't stay in the air for very long without refueling. They have very short ranges without air refueling. They have very short time that they can stay in the air without air refueling. They have very limited capabilities without access to air refueling. There was an interview that I watched with a military jet pilot. I'm pretty sure he was retired, and they were asking him like, how much fuel how much fuel do these planes use? And he said that if I went into afterburner, like if I went full throttle on the jet, I would probably use a full tank of fuel in under 5 minutes. That is the insane amount of fuel that our jet aircraft uses. Like, absolutely crazy. And most of the jet is fuel. Like, it's just full of fuel. I don't know how much fuel they carry, but it is a tremendous amount of fuel. And they can basically go through all that fuel in like a couple of hours of flight time. Normal, just like normal flight, I think they can stay in the air for a couple of hours. But anyway, we are extremely dependent. Let me look. I'm curious. Let me pause. You know what? Well, yeah, let me pause it because I don't want something to pop up on the screen and then I'll have to delete the video. So let me pause this. Well, according to the AI answer from Google, uh, you know, AI confidently gives answers whether it's true or not. According to that, we have around 600 air refuelers, which is a lot more than I thought we had. I thought we had maybe 50 to 100. We actually have like 600, but that's our entire military, including like the Coast Guard. I don't know if the Coast Guard has air refuelers, but it's the entire military. It's like 600 air refuelers. That is, one of the spots where we are really, really weak in is our dependence on air refuelers. Uh, it's you could devastate air operations in a region by taking out a couple of air refuelers. So yeah, it's I don't know why I was getting into that discussion about air refuelers, but it's just we have a lot of weaknesses. Our military has a lot of weaknesses. It's not really designed for fighting an adversary that has a modern military. We just don't have large numbers of stuff. We have small numbers of really amazing things that are really expensive and really hard to make. If we get into like an attrition style war like Russia is in with Ukraine, we're going to very quickly run out of Tomahawk missiles. We're going to very quickly run out of Patriot missiles and THAAD missiles and bunker busters and all that crap. Um, like we're going to run out of everything. They're expending like massive amounts of ammunition and artillery in the war in Ukraine. It's just insane the amount of artillery that's being fired over there. I'm quite certain that we had to increase manufacturing capacity to be able to meet the needs of artillery being fired over there. I think that they expended more artillery in a month than we had in our stockpile. It was something crazy like that. So we had to increase manufacturing capacity on that. We can't increase manufacturing capacity on things like Tomahawk missiles to that level. They're talking about maybe, like right now, I think the manufacturing capacity of Tomahawk missiles is like 60 per year. And they're saying that they might be able to scale that up to 1,000 per year. Could you imagine if we were in a conflict with a non-nuclear conflict with like China? 1,000 Tomahawks in a year? We could probably launch 1,000 Tomahawks in a week easily in a war with China. So yeah, we really need to go in and just, unfortunately, there's the common saying that our military is always preparing for the last war. So every new conflict, we just get our asses kicked until we evolve. And we've been really lucky up to this point that we haven't really lost a war from going in unprepared. So I don't know. It's every major war up to this point has moved so slowly that it allowed for the evolution of warfare. Like in World War II, when it started, when Germany invaded Poland, they invaded on horseback. Like that's like where the militaries were at the beginning of World War II. And yeah, it evolved rapidly. Warfare evolved rapidly. Well, back in World War II, you couldn't move things around. Transportation was so slow. Like you were moving troops across the ocean in ships that were, taking a really long time to travel from point A to point B. Now we can move, troops around the world on aircraft and have them there in a day instead of, weeks. We can move, an army in a couple of days. And it's like, I don't know how the next major world war is going to play out with how quickly troops can move and assets can move. And if you fall behind in the evolution of warfare, you may not be able to catch up like you could back in World War One, World War Two, where it took so long for troops to move into position and do all that stuff. It gave you time to catch up whenever you were behind. In the next major war, I don't know if you're going to be able to catch up. Like if we go to war with China and they're preparing for the next war and we're preparing for the last war, if we go to war with China and, we've got all of our wonder weapons that are basically useless in a major conflict, and China comes into it with the Russian style of just massive amounts of mediocre stuff that's easily replaced, they may be so victorious over us that like we can't like get back up from it. They may knock us down to the point where we can't get back up. I don't know. Anyway, that's the whole other discussion. But the China situation, we're likely going to go to war with China in my lifetime. So, and you look at root causes stuff, what's going on with Venezuela and Iran, all these places, you could look at that as part of an asymmetric war that we're fighting with China and Russia right now. Because basically, China and Russia have been trying to take over all of our energy supplies because our civilization runs on energy, on petroleum. And China and Russia have been trying to take over all of our energy supplies. And we have gone out and started taking it back. We just took back Venezuela. Um, we're taking back the Middle East. It's you could look at this like I think that what's happening in Iran is Israel puppeteering us, but this could be some 4D chess where this is actually asymmetric warfare with China and Russia about control of energy supplies. Who knows? Who knows? All we get out of the government is just complete nonsense and gibberish propaganda. None of it's true, so you can't trust anything that they say. What's going to happen with this war? I don't think anybody knows. Iran doesn't know. Israel doesn't know. The United States doesn't know. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen with this war. Everybody's just winging it. It appears that the U.S. and Israel went in with either no plan or a bad plan, and everybody's just kind of winging it. Right now, oil is dropping because people think the financial markets, which oil is sold in a financial market, it's emotion based. So the emotion, the thought at the time is, things are good. Things are, Trump came out and said that this war is going to end pretty soon. And um, sorry, I just started thinking about when the load picks up. Like, how much time do I have? Today's the 10th. It picks up you know, when am I going to leave here? I'll leave here um, midday on the 12th so that I can take a 10-hour break before I pick the load up. so, so I basically got tomorrow. It's going to be my last day here. Anyway, sorry. Uh, Started thinking about something else. So the emotion of the moment is that people are hopeful that this war is going to end soon. And we also have, we've installed a puppet government in Venezuela. So now we're going to start importing oil from Venezuela, and they have some of the largest oil reserves in the world. And something that people are not talking about is what's going, on with Guyana and their massive oil reserves. And then people are also optimistic, thinking that we're going to install a puppet government in Iran and we're going to lift sanctions on Iran. And Iran and Iraq and all these places, the oil is going to start flowing like crazy out of all these places. So everybody's thinking, wait a second, this is actually not bad. This is good. This is the government telling us that 2 plus 2 is 5. And everybody's like, I had no idea. Thanks for, filling me in on that. So everything sucks right now. It's really bad. But the government, Trump came out and said everything's amazing. And now all of these morons in the financial markets are like, oh, yeah, okay. I thought things were bad, but Trump said they're good. So I guess they're good. I'm sorry. I don't know why we started trading oil at such a high price. Let's bring it back down from $120 to $80. $40 drop in oil prices in like 2 days. That's insane. Um, the pump price hasn't changed. It got up to $5.75 a gallon. What's crazy is on the Landstar fuel app and on TA's fuel app, on their TruckSmart app, the price at the pump is $5.35 a gallon. But the sign says $5.75 a gallon. I don't know what's going on with that. And I thought maybe, the apps just haven't updated, but it's been the same price for 2 days. Yesterday morning it was $5.75 a gallon, and it's still $5.75 a gallon out there. So I don't know why there's a 40 cent per gallon difference in the price on the app versus the price on the sign. I don't know what's going on with that. So, yeah, I don't think anybody really knows what's going on. And Trump makes it sound like he hasn't even made decisions on what exactly he's going to do next. He's just kind of playing it by ear. He's just winging it. Uh, it's just, don't get me wrong. I think Trump is one of the best presidents we've had in a long time. And if I voted in the last election, it would have been for Trump, but only because of how bad the other choices are, how bad our other presidents have been. Like, we've had some really bad presidents in the United States. Like, these are people that if they were to like apply for a job and I was the hiring manager, I would not hire them to be like a manager at a McDonald's, and yet they're running our country. Like, these are narcissists. They're pathological liars. I wouldn't hire them for anything. You can't trust them. Um, but Trump versus Kamala Harris, like there's no competition there. It's like, you're not very smart, but they're putting you up against like really dumb people. Makes you look like the best choice out there. So yeah, I'm saying a lot of negative things about Trump, but I still think he's one of the best presidents we've had. I think the outcome of Iran, if we end up not putting troops on the ground and this turning into another Vietnam, which the draft is highly likely if we put troops on the ground in Iran, there's highly likely to be another draft. This could turn into another Vietnam if we put troops on the ground. Everybody better be hoping that like the stupid doesn't get too thick over in the United States government for us to put troops on the ground. Like that would be, a lot of the military experts are coming out and just saying it is absolutely outlandish that people are even spreading that rumor because of how stupid it is. It would be absolutely idiotic for us to put troops on the ground. I agree with that. It would be really dumb for us to put troops on the ground in Iran. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So, all right, we've done like hopeful best case scenario, and I kind of did like a bad scenario, not a worst case scenario, but a bad scenario of us putting troops on the ground and escalation ladder. Infrastructure would be attacked. Uh, Iran would get desperate and start lashing out. They would start attacking infrastructure around everywhere, and we would see massive escalation. What is a realistic scenario? Let me think. What is realistically going to happen? Iran is hurting, Israel is hurting, and the United States is hurting. And the Gulf Coast countries are all hurting. Everybody is hurting right now. I think what everybody is kind of hoping will happen is that it's going to end like the 12-day war ended, where everybody just kind of like, they don't have a ceasefire agreement, they don't have a peace treaty, there's nothing that's signed, there's no written agreement. There's just kind of a head nod of, all right, if you stop shooting at me, I'll stop shooting at you. That's what ended the 12-day war, was basically just a verbal agreement. And it wasn't even an agreement. It was just you know, if you guys stop firing, I'll stop firing. And they're like, well, if you stop firing, I'll stop firing. And they're like, well, you fired. I, I'm, I might fire back. And that went on for, a few hours, a few days. And then eventually it got to the point where one side had to capitulate to the other. Like somebody had to fire last. And we still don't know who fired the last shots in the 12-day war because Israel has footage of Iranian missiles hitting after the deadline. And Iran was like, we fired those before the deadline. Just because they hit after the deadline, that we fired them before the deadline. And Iran claimed that there were Israeli aircraft that dropped bombs after the deadline as well. So we don't really know what happened. But to my knowledge, there was nothing signed. It was kind of like a verbal agreement that they would just stop shooting at each other. Um, and I think that's what they're kind of hoping. I think all sides involved in this, that's what they're hoping is going to happen now, because everybody is hurting. And I don't think any of them are really prepared for a long, drawn out war. The United States is not prepared for a long, drawn out war. Israel is not prepared for a long, drawn out war because Israel's dependent on the United States. Israel, I think, would like a long, drawn out war. They're gung ho, ready to go for it. But they depend on the United States for armaments. And the United States is not in a position to arm them for a long, drawn out war. So it's, and with the devastation that Iran is unleashing on Israel right now, they may not be as gung ho as they normally are at fighting Muslims. So I don't know. We'll see. And they're also fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I saw something a minute ago that said that Israel made a statement that they weren't going to stop fighting Hezbollah this time until they were completely annihilated. Last time they, just beat them up really bad. This time they're not going to stop until they're completely gone. Basically, the same vow that they made about Hamas. They said that they were not going to stop fighting Hamas until they were completely destroyed. Now they're making the same vow that they're not going to stop fighting Hezbollah until they're completely destroyed. So it's I don't know. It's just insane. How crazy is it that we have narcissistic, crazy people that are members of doomsday cults running the world? Like, how crazy is that? Just take a step back and just think about that. Just imagine, just imagine it for a second. Just I know that we're living it right now. We've become complacent to this existence. But just take a step back and think about that. Reflect on that. That we have people in the United States that are like radical Christians that believe that they need to support Israel and bring about Armageddon so that so that they can bring back the second coming of Jesus. And we have radical Jews running Israel that feel that they need to bring forth Armageddon, rebuild the temple so that their Messiah can come back. Or well, not come back, but come. They don't think Jesus was the Messiah. They think the Messiah is yet to come. There's a difference of opinion between the Jews and the Christians. The Jews look down on the Christians. It's absolutely crazy that the Christians support the Jews, and the Jews just think that the Christians are a bunch of idiots. And then we have the Muslims, which I'm not very familiar with Islam, but they have a very similar like prophecy about some kind of Armageddon and bringing forth, the second coming or the coming of the Messiah or something. Three very similar religions. They basically, all three religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, all three religions seem like they all use the same source material to write their Bibles or their Qurans or whatever, but they all interpreted it a little bit different. They're three very similar religions that have almost the same prophecies, but they're just a little bit different. It's the three crazy kids out on the school ground, and they're fighting over like a toy or something. Like they're willing to fight to the death over who's going to get, the GI Joe. It's crazy to just sit back and look at it from a third party perspective. You're just like, are these people seriously like going to fight to the death over like some make believe fantasy stuff that they just like doesn't exist that they believe in? Yeah, they are. They're going to fight to the death over it. And unfortunately, we've allowed them to get into positions of power to where it's not just them fighting to the death, it's all of us. We've allowed people that are members of doomsday cults should not be allowed in leadership positions of countries. That should not be a thing. We should not have those types of people leading countries. Because it puts us into this kind of position that we're in right now. And whether you believe it or not, let me turn this back off because it's really bright. Whether you believe it or not, this is a religious war. You may not think it's a religious war, The people fighting in it, the people flying the aircraft and stuff like that, they may not believe it's a religious war, but the people behind it orchestrating the war are ultra religious doomsday cult members. It is definitely a religious war. But anyway, yeah, I think that is the best, most. I think that's so. We have the best, we have the worst, and then the realistic scenario. I think the realistic scenario here of what's going to happen is that within a week or two, all parties involved are can just like try. They're going to try to just tone it all down and end it. They're going to like agree to disagree kind of thing. Basically, the exact same thing that happened at the 12-Day War. And that is possible because there are no troops on the ground in any of these countries. Once you put troops on the ground, it's really hard to de escalate. It's really hard to shut it down once you have troops on the ground. But because we don't have troops on the ground in any of these countries, I mean, there are troops in these countries, but we're not like fighting a troop war. There are troops stationed at, in the bases throughout the Gulf Coast countries, but the GCCs. But we don't have any troops on the ground fighting aside from like black ops units. Um, so it's like we're still in a position where we could end this really quickly. Like this war could end in a matter of hours. Once troops are on the ground, you can't end the war that quickly. It becomes much more complicated once you have troops fighting in country. So hopefully we don't see infrastructure being attacked any further. We've already seen infrastructure being attacked. That's a massive escalation. So hopefully no more infrastructure attacks, and hopefully no more. We don't have any troops on the ground. So those are the two things that I'm worried about right now: are infrastructure and troops. No troops, no infrastructure. And I really love that the financial people think that the Venezuelan oil is going to be here tomorrow, and everything's going to be great. It's going to take a long time for that Venezuelan oil to start getting here. Uh, Refineries have to be changed to be able to even accommodate that oil. It's not something that's going to happen in a day or a week. Maybe months from now, we might start benefiting from that Venezuelan oil. So, but anyway, the financial markets aren't based in reality. So, hey, if they want to be oblivious to what's going on and drop the price of oil, price of oil is already back down to $80 a barrel. I'm hoping that tomorrow we see a significant drop in fuel prices. Fuel prices right now, the price at the pump is not reflective of the price of the barrel. The pump prices should drop dramatically with how much the price per barrel has dropped. So Iran and the United States have both been making statements basically saying that oil tankers and other vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz is okay. Um, so hopefully we see the Strait of Hormuz go to normal traffic flow. I don't know if that's going to happen. It seems like the Iranian leadership is fractured and there's not really any one person running the show because Iran is constantly contradicting itself. They're constantly coming out and saying one thing and then doing another. Like they'll come out and say, yeah, we're not going to fire on any Gulf Coast countries, and then while they're making that announcement, they're dropping bombs on Gulf Coast countries. And I've seen statements where like the president of Iran comes out and says something, and then the IRGC will come out and say the president of Iran is not leading this country. We don't care what he says. Like that's the type of thing that's going on in Iran right now. Is leadership is fractured, and everybody's kind of doing their own thing. The IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the radical religious military in Iran, the main military of Iran, they seem to be kind of running the show on this war. So we'll just have to wait and see how everything goes. Hopefully, there's no more disruption on the Strait of Hormuz, And hopefully the people in the financial markets that are affecting the oil prices, hopefully they keep living in blissful ignorance and the oil prices keep going down. Because it does look really promising for oil futures as far as the prices going really, really far down. Venezuela, that opening up to us, that's been sanctioned for many years. And they are like right off, like they're really close. Venezuela's really close to the United States. So Venezuelan oil coming into the U.S., those Guyana reserves are going to get tapped. That's going to be massive. That alone is absolutely massive. And then with the possibility of Iran having a friendly regime there, and sanctions being lifted from Iran, wow, that could be really amazing. Like like all the constraints to the flow of oil around the world could be lifted, and we could see $20 a barrel oil again. Like it could get really cheap. That's a possibility. But there's a lot of possibilities right now. Anyway, let's wrap this up. I haven't even been scrolling through the load board in a long time. I apologize. Um, so, a 2.5 hour video. Let's wrap this up. Hope you're having a great one. And I'm going to do trip planning and figure out where all my stops are for this load and see what exactly I'm going to do for this load. So, and I'm going to hope that fuel prices drop by about $1 a gallon before I get fuel on the 12th. So I've got 2 days until I'm going to fuel up here in Aurora. So I hope fuel prices drop by a lot over the next couple of days. We'll see. Have a good one. Bye.